Welcome, everyone.
Hang on a second.
Can you go to the slideshow to show the full? Yeah, there we go. Thank you. So just going over a couple little ground rules for everyone. Just want you to know that we have a lot of people joining us today. We have over 200 people who are RSVP'd, so very exciting to have all of you attend. So in the interest of being able to hear and see the speakers, please mute your mic while the presenters are speaking. And it may also help if you turn off your camera in case people are having some network issues. Please ask any questions you may have in the chat at any time during the presentation or afterwards. We'll be collecting all of the questions and we hope to get to some of them in the session, but we may also run out of time, but it doesn't mean we won't take back your questions and we can provide them to the speakers post-event as well. This session will be recorded. You might have seen the message come up stating that. And data from the polls in the session will be anonymous, but we will capture the information in our post-event report, so stay tuned for that as well. I did want to start with a quick land acknowledgement. So I'm just going to do that quickly. We meet today on a virtual platform using technology not available in many Indigenous communities. Each of us are privileged to be on sacred land that has supported human beings for thousands of years, and it's rich in Indigenous history, knowledge, and tradition of those who maintained balance with nature and millennia and still do. In this spirit, we believe it is crucial for us as settlers and guests to acknowledge the land's traditional names and its caretakers, about which our schools do not teach us. Turtle Island refers to the continent of North America, and the concept of a circular economy can reference back to Indigenous traditional ways where reciprocity and balance, such as giving back when we take, are at the center of how all living beings should interact with each other. We acknowledge all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across Turtle Island as the original stewards of this land and in perpetuity, while their histories and culture influence our community to this day. And we invite you to consider your relationship to the land and how you benefit from being here, while original caretakers may not. Take a moment to reflect on, research, and understand and honor and respect peoples Indigenous to the lands where you live, work, and play. Thank you for that. Our agenda today is we'll have a quick overview of circular economy. For those who may not be as familiar, we'll have a presentation from our consultant, Dillon. And then we have several municipalities who are represented here today. So they'll be doing a quick introduction before we get into the Q&A period. And now I'll pass it over to Audrey.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our event. We are absolutely amazed and inspired by the attendance and registration that we have here. Thank you so much for joining us. So you may ask, what is a circular economy club? Now, this is a nonprofit, global, and open club that provides a way to spur collaboration by connecting professionals together so that we have a much higher impact through local organizations around the world as they organize events in their own cities. As you can see here, we have 4 participating cities in Canada. We would love to have more cities in Canada. If you're interested at all in becoming a CEC leader in your city, please contact us and we can help you figure that out. You will understand who the city leaders are out of our team here, because in the name on their participation video screen, it will say the city that they are a leader for. Please reach out if you're interested. Next slide. So our team has been together for just over 2 years, and the reason we became Circular Economy Clubs of Canada was rather unique opportunity out of the pandemic. We were all leading events in our own cities, and when we all had to go virtual due to the pandemic, we reached out, came together, and decided how wonderful it would be to pool our resources and do events together to get a snapshot of what's going on across Canada. So our focus as Circular Economy Clubs of Canada is to provide that snapshot of municipalities in our spring event, and then of business in Canada in our fall event. So I hope you join us in the fall as well. we as volunteers work very well together, and without this team, this would not be happening. So thank you to everyone on this team for joining together to create this. Next slide. So as you can see, this is the Circular Economy Club's mission as a whole, as the global organization. And the whole idea here is to build networking so that we can strengthen the awareness of circular economy within our cities and support local initiatives. Next slide. This is just a great snapshot from the website. You can see here that there's 280 chapters, 21,000 participants, and growing all the time. So if you are in a city that does not have a chapter, please try and sign up and join the movement. Next slide. So as you can see here, this is, giving us a short introduction to the circular economy. Now, I'm sure that most of you here understand what the circular economy is. This was just as a backup for people who may not understand what it is. You will receive this slide deck when our recording is ready, and we distribute the recording and the deck. So I'm going to be very brief in going over these slides. Currently, we have a take, make, waste linear economy. We cannot continue this way. This is not acceptable, and we need to find new ways to move forward. So as you can see, there are issues listed here that are part of a linear economy that we need to be mindful of. And I'm going to try and tie those a little bit to the three basic principles of circular economy. So in the resource scarcity, we are not using renewable resources, and we are not being regenerative at the end of life of our products and materials. So that needs to stop. And so principle number one, we need to regenerate our natural systems and find ways to constantly feed back in a single loop. On the second point there, the environmental stress is quite obvious. And on top of that, what we have found in our research is that it's also stressful for our youth. In fact, there's a label now called eco-anxiety, which is quite prevalent. There's a statistic done by Stats Canada that 76% of our youth suffer from eco-anxiety. So how can we give them concrete ways to move forward so that they feel hopeful? And principle number two of the circular economy is to create jobs, to design out waste and pollution. And the last note here about loss of value of materials. So there's a realization that there's huge losses economically for our materials and increased use of capital and energy use when our products reach their end of life prematurely. If we can reimagine, redesign, and remanufacture, it enables the longer life of these products and materials. We will actually benefit the economics of our lifestyle and our business. So principle number three, keep products and materials in use. Next slide. So this is a common visual used for the circular economy. It's a great foundation illustration. So on the left, we have our biological cycles that regenerate the earth. And on the right, we have the technical cycles that reduce the use of our resources. And you'll notice that some loops are small and others are large. And the one that illustrates that the most is the technical cycle. So you can see that as you maintain, reuse, refurbish, you are actually closer to the most viable way to keep a product in use. You'll notice the recycle is on the very outside edge, and that's because it takes a lot of energy and time and resources to actually break something down and rebuild it. We hope to establish keeping products in use and using recycle as a last resort. All right, our mission, I think there's a next slide there, or no, I'm just going to introduce George, but I'd just like to finish off with the fact that our mission is to create awareness for business, municipalities, and citizens on how to wear this lens, which was the slide previous, as they move forward and contribute to the circular economy in their city. Over to you, George. Can't hear you, George.
George? Maybe we'll just have to keep going.
I'm sorry. My pleasure. I'm sorry about that. I just had to unmute. Here we go. So most people are familiar with the Green New Deal that was coined by Joe Biden, never saw the light of day because of politics here. Meanwhile, in the EU, they came together to create their Green Deal, making sure they brought all cities and regions into the tent, recognizing that they are a hub for solutions. Then EU cities took a step further with their own declaration to accelerate the process, because they knew they were in the best position to do grassroots collaborations with residents, businesses, and their research community. Next slide. Oh, I'm not sure what's happening with the slides here. Seems to be a technical glitch with this. Okay, there we go. City of Toronto was an early adopter back in 2016 as part of their long-term waste management strategy. It included a framework for circular economy, including circular procurement. With its purchasing power of approximately $2 billion per year, the city is providing opportunities for businesses with existing circular models while encouraging others to get with their program. Montreal is a true powerhouse in circular economy. First in Canada to have a dedicated website, and its economic development department has included consulting and support in circular economy across all of its offices in the greater region. The University of Montreal is an advanced ecosystem of professors, student groups, and other professional practitioners of CE. And a shout out to someone who's not on the list here, Vancouver, and its creation of not just a local waste management program, but the renowned National Zero Waste Council, who has been at the forefront of helping Canada transition to circular economy for a number of years. Vancouver is also taking charge of its built environment by implementing policy and infrastructure for new deconstruction sector. And last but not least, a small city, the city of Guelph, population 135,000. Guelph is in the process of creating circularity across the full value chain of the food sector, engaging with all forms of business, sector associations, government agencies, and academia. In fact, it's the University of Guelph and its students that created their online resource sharing platform that just recently launched. And here we go, next slide. So big questions moving forward, too big to answer all today. How do we define it, measure it, move forward, and progress with it? At least to help get this started, we need a CE specialist. In fact, the person I'm going to introduce now was hired as a CE specialist a little over a year ago by a 1,000 employee, Canadian owned and operated consulting firm, and now is an associate in the firm and their national CE practice leader. She has experience working in the EU, the US, and now here in Canada. And I'd like to say a friend to our CEC Canada network. The Netherlands loss was Team Canada's huge gain. Tessa, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you so much, George. That's very kind of you. Well, it's a true honor to be here today with all of you. I guess one of the reasons I am here today is because Dillon supported the first cohort of the Canadian Circular Cities and Regions initiative. That was the initiative of the Federation of Canadian Municipalities and its partners, which included National Zero Waste Council, the Recycling Council of Alberta, and Récit Québec. And we had the honor to work with 14 communities in 28 workshops to help them prepare their circular economy roadmaps. And I'm very happy to talk to you about how municipalities can start on their journey to a circular economy. And next slide, please. Is that working? Next slide. Well, I'll just keep going.
There's a problem with the slides. There we go.
Wonderful. So why do cities engage on a journey to circular economy? So from what we've heard, municipalities are really looking for an integrated approach to carbon footprint reduction, to economic resilience and diversification, waste reduction. These are all big global issues, but also major issues on a municipal level. And at the same time, contributing to making complete neighborhoods, supporting equity and inclusion, and much more. So there's a strong case for it, but next slide. The path, what does that look like really to transition from a linear to a circular economy? And what is the role of a municipal administration in supporting and guiding or driving such a transition? And unfortunately, there's not really a blueprint for such a path. And some municipalities are sometimes hesitating in starting their journey because of this lack of clarity or uncertainty. Next slide. Now, while there may not be a clear path for transition, most municipalities do have a clear work process and structures that govern how they approach any topic, which really starts with a strategy and then is reflected in plans and policies that are executed and evaluated, which reinforms a new strategy. And in this overview, the starting point is a strategy, but what really to base that strategy on? So next slide. There's really this big issue or challenge that a circular economy is still young, it's still evolving, emerging, it's continuously changing in terms because so much is being learned across the globe, across jurisdictions on how best to implement this vision. And while we can learn from all of those front runners, at the same time, every community is unique. It has its own culture, conditions, economy, and geography and challenges, history. These are factors that can play into what really the opportunities are for any specific community. And then thirdly, there's this really strong cross-departmental and multidisciplinary nature to circular economy, which can be a challenge in regular work processes. So next slide. So there's a need for a first step that is really around exploration and experimentation, a stage for learning, for really assessing what the landscape looks like, to build capacity and really to assess where a community stands and what their opportunities are. Next slide. So we have been working with municipalities on developing roadmaps, but what are roadmaps? For most municipalities, it's really a document that lays out the planning and approach for this initial exploration stage, and it can contain a vision of a circular economy for a particular community. It can contain key goals, an overview of challenges and opportunities. It can contain areas of focus and actions. But even beyond that first stage, some cities, they opt not to develop a standalone strategy and get into a normal cycle there, but they really want to integrate circular economy in the existing strategies, so more of a lateral approach. And in that case, you see some cities also use the term roadmap to really distinguish it from the vertical strategies. Next slide. So what are some things that municipalities can think of to get started when they want to go and transition to a circular economy? Well, again, this first stage is really all about learning and exploring, and that starts with engagement. It starts with internal engagement. So what are really the levels of awareness and capacity? What are things that are already being done or being considered that are circular? And are there topics or circular elements that are already in the current plans and existing plans? What are the biggest issues and opportunities that the organization is trying to address that could benefit from circular approaches? Who can be internal champions? All key questions. Then external engagement. What are existing circular activities that are already taking place within the community? Who's driving these initiatives? do they see any barriers or opportunities that the municipality could help address? What is the level of awareness of circular economy in the broader community, in the business community? Are there potential partners among stakeholders that could help create the right boundary conditions for a circular economy to prosper? And then building capacity, of course, training. Not everybody has heard of circular economy. And even when people have heard of it, circular economy is easily oversimplified or misunderstood. So taking the time to train people, explain the principles and how they can translate into practice is really important. Another way to build capacities to learn from other municipalities, right? For example, through the Circular Cities and Regions initiative, which also comes with a peer-to-peer network, which I heard is really powerful. And this learning is not just about building capacity, it's also about inspiring and motivating people to develop initiatives. But exploration and learning cannot go without experimentation, and pilots are crucial in trying out approaches to really powering the transition. Finally, or of course, mapping, measuring. George, you already mentioned it in your introduction. Better understanding the landscape to start with, to identify and prioritize opportunities, to map and measure, it's extremely valuable. So this can include mapping of existing initiatives, assessing or estimating their impact on some key KPIs, or developing a baseline of material flows in the region and their impact on waste, on greenhouse gas emissions, on the economy, on the social fabric of the community. And this not only can inform a potential future strategy, but it can also support engagement and training when explaining the potential benefits of a circular economy in your community. Finally, existing governance structures may need adjusting. Cross-departmental and multidisciplinary nature, circular economy may require coordination and communication of efforts across departments or divisions, and maybe monitoring frameworks need adjusted, and maybe you need dedicated resources. So all of these things are things to consider in this first stage. And eventually it can form an approach, a strategy. And next slide, please. And that is really going to the tough questions. So what is our purpose in pursuing a circular economy? What if it's priority? What is going to be our role as a municipality? Are we going to be a leader, a facilitator? And what are the most important areas of focus for our municipality? Next slide. So some of the potential areas of focus that we have seen most: built environment, consumer goods and textiles, agri-food systems, energy and mobility. They come back all the time, but also themes like waste prevention and recovery, sharing reuse economy, business innovation, social innovation, industrial symbiosis, circular procurement, all topics that are top of mind for municipalities interested in circular economy. I'll leave it at that today. I look forward to your questions, and thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. Before we get to our next speakers, and I apologize, we're going to do questions at the end. I would like to do a couple of polls because we're very curious to know who is in the room today. So Desiree, do you mind bringing up our first poll? And if people could just fill out what your affiliation is, where you're coming from, then it'll just give everyone an idea of who is in the room with us today. I'll give you a couple minutes just to fill that out. And then I'm not sure, Desiree, if we're able to show the responses.
Still trickling in, just get a brief moment.
Oh, no problem. And yes, please, I encourage you that if you do have, oh, there we go, good picture of who is in the room. We have a good variety of folks from all different backgrounds, whether it be government, business, academia, the grassroots NGO level, even some individuals and other. Great. Let's do our other poll as well, because I think we have two polls we were going to do. So poll number 2 is your business organization currently engaging in circular economy work? So you may know definitely that you're not. Some people may not be sure. And then different people might be in different phases of whether they're exploring and experimenting, developing a strategy, doing execution, or fully established. And as we go through the other speakers, please do feel free to write any of your questions in the chat, and we will try to get to them immediately after their introductory presentations. And that includes for Tessa. If you have any questions for Tessa, feel free to put them into the chat as well. All right. So it sounds like the majority of people are doing some exploring and experimenting, but there's people at every level, even some fully established and in operation folks. So that is excellent to know. Great. Well, let's move on. We do have our panelists. So here they're just introduced in general here, and we're going to be hearing from each one of these their introductory remarks. And then, as I speak, if you think of any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, and then we'll have some time for questions and answers after as well. So I'm going to move right on to Rachel, have you present on the town of New Glasgow. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. My name is Rachel Mitchell. I'm the Climate Change and Sustainability Manager with the town of New Glasgow, and I'm excited to be speaking to you today about our journey with the circular economy. Next slide, please. Just to give you a brief overview of what I'll be speaking on today, I'm going to start with a bit of a local context in case you don't know where the town of New Glasgow is. I'll give some background on how we got started and our approach, as well as the opportunities that we see going forward with our circular economy roadmap and the next stage with our work. Next slide. So I have the privilege of representing the East Coast of Canada today. The town of New Glasgow is a small town. We have a population of about 9,471 residents, and we're located in northern Nova Scotia. So kind of close to the ferry to PEI, if you've ever been out this way. Lovely riverside town. We have the East River running straight through town, separating the east and west. We also serve as the commercial service center for a wider Pictou County region. So the county has close to 43,000 residents, and further than that, the town of Glasgow does provide services to kind of greater northern Nova Scotia. What's interesting about our community is we actually have the highest population density outside of Halifax. So small town with relatively high urban density. And obviously in comparison to some of the following panelists, we are quite small. You could probably fit our population in a couple high rises in Mississauga or something. But with being a small town, there are a lot of great opportunities. And when it comes to the circular economy, this is a concept and idea that with our council, we feel we can move forward with quite quickly from idea to implementation of moving things forward and really operationalizing these principles. So ultimately, we are at the starting line here. So representing a community that's really just kind of getting out of the gate. But absolutely, we're working to increase our capacity and take a good look at what we're doing internally with our operations and where those opportunities are to advance circularity. Next slide. So why we care about the circular economy? Well, local government is really well positioned to advance this work. And for me, as a climate and sustainability professional, it's ultimately a pathway to advance these objectives, but also to strengthen our local economy and support affordable access to goods and services. And I think that's more important now than ever, really, as we're grappling with high inflation and concerns with global supply chains. So I think there's a real opportunity here to support this shift from linear to circular and really utilizing our role as a small town and as a municipality to really enable this transition locally. And when it comes to our climate work, ultimately, the circular economy is absolutely needed if we are to get to net zero emissions. There's a lot of alignment when it comes to really what we're doing and what we're trying to move forward with on the sustainability front and being environmental stewards in our community. And it's forward thinking in nature, really moving forward with the circular economy. We're trying to future-proof our decision making and ensure that we are getting things right the first time. And we have a big role to play as a government with our buying power locally. And that's ultimately why we care. Next slide. So when it comes to our approach to move this work forward, it's really transformational work. It's not simple, and Tessa certainly alluded to that. It's not necessarily just a plan and something you can kind of check off. There's a lot of moving parts to this, and really it's a concerted effort from everyone. The work itself is being directed through our climate and sustainability team, which is really a mighty team of one, myself, and we do have one contract staff person. I think what really needs to happen is we need to embed principles of the circular economy throughout our organization, identifying opportunities for every department to play a role in this work and have it part of that decision making. Yeah, so as was previously mentioned, really in terms of alignment, it's important to highlight, especially in talking with other departments, how this does work in terms of areas like community development, healthy built environment, and our local economic growth. There's steps that we can take to increase our capacity and build our internal understanding of the circular economy in the context of our municipal operations, but also to the wider community as well, to advance their thinking and understanding of this work. Next slide. So in terms of how we got here, it's not a very long story, but in 2020, before the pandemic really took hold, there was a presentation on import replacement. So it's a presentation to our CAO and I think some others in the community across Pictou County on what import replacement would look like. So what are big employers that we had operating here, and what are goods that they are regularly buying that are coming from all over, and how could they be replaced with goods locally? As we know, the value of a dollar invested in your local economy has far-reaching benefits. So that presentation was great, but ultimately went nowhere. The world got turned upside down, and really we did not make any progress on that front. It was not until a year later in 2021 that the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative was announced, and we saw it as an opportunity to really move this work forward and be able to understand how we can do that and what the opportunities are for us locally. In 2022, we were able to complete our circular economy roadmap through the CCRI program, and our community climate action plan was also approved just back in March. And within that plan, we have identified circular economy as a key priority moving forward. Additional measures that are kind of on our radar around circular procurement and community engagement, and I'll speak to those in the next slide. Great, so the opportunities that we have, again, I just want to highlight that we are very much in the early stages, but we've identified sustainable procurement as being a key piece that we want to advance. We have a lot of buying power really as a town, as a business in a small area, and we want to ensure that sustainability considerations are at the forefront. And they're more than just considerations, it's key criteria, and it's not about just how much something costs right now. We want to understand the life cycle costs of these assets, reduce those costs, and further have an idea of what end of life management looks like. As a municipality, we want to design waste out of our practices, and that's a key principle of the circular economy. And we view circular and sustainable procurement as a key means to be able to deliver on that. Certainly, that policy and that process will have challenges. That comes from being a smaller community, but really we see it as a key tool to enable this transition locally and to ensure that businesses are thinking about what they can do. Another key piece is really around circular economy literacy. I'm cognizant that this cannot just be another buzzword. In the world of climate and sustainability, we're kind of always talking about things we need to do, and the circular economy being a pathway to achieve these objectives. We want to ensure that people understand what that means and what that means in their own context too, at their department and for our council in terms of their decision making. The circular economy roadmap, which was discussed, is a phenomenal tool, and I'm actually going to go over that in the next couple of slides, but that's another key opportunity for us. And lastly, I just want to touch on climate and sustainability from a different standpoint, which is Nova Scotia has some pretty phenomenal waste diversion practices right now. And yes, this still fits in the linear context, but we want to be able to leverage the interest and the pride that exists around our current waste diversion work and transition that into thinking around circularity, but also as a as an entry point into greater climate sustainability action that could be around transportation, active transportation, home energy efficiency, and really highlight the importance of all of our actions, because I think waste diversion is something that is tangible. I'm going to jump ahead on our circular economy work. If you could actually just go to the next slide, cognizant of time here. In terms of the roadmap and what we're able to achieve through that, it's really understanding cross-cutting strategies and plans and where we can embed circularity. So 2 key areas of focus for corporate operations, as I mentioned, and circular homes. So there's a lot of municipal levers around incentivizing building performance and also land use bylaws and pieces like that, where we can eliminate barriers within the built environment to encourage this work. Next slide. Great. So in terms of our next stage, we're really trying to formalize this work and have it in policy and procedure. So we're identifying those internal opportunities to embed circularity and determining how we can reach out to the community, really from an action standpoint, more than just talking about it. So fix-it fairs, opportunities to highlight repair and refurbishing, repurposing materials. And we will be presenting the roadmap to council, most likely in July or August of this summer. And another key piece I want to highlight is really that we're trying to celebrate successes of even the small things we're doing around repurposing within our municipality. We did something with our Christmas lights this year, and we actually built some garden boxes with old doors from a building. And while those are small pieces, it does add up. And I think celebrating those successes is important for driving this work forward and empowering people. The next slide is just my contact information if you need to reach out. It's hard to capture everything in a short period of time, and it's something that I'm very passionate about, so happy to connect with folks. As Tessa said, there's a CCRI network, and we're all pretty dedicated and keen, so definitely reach out, and happy to answer any questions. Apologies if I went over time.
No, that's okay. Thank you so much, Rachel. And yeah, you know, if you have questions, please just put them in the chat, because we're going to keep moving on to our next speakers. But I did want to just also say, like, kudos to the people who are presenting from their municipality, because I know there's a lot of people who took part in the Circular Cities initiative, and these 4 folks are the brave folks who are willing to share their experiences. I know we're all at different levels of engagement and figuring out our own strategies, but yeah, please put any comments or questions you might have for Rachel in the chat, and we'll move on to Diane from City of Mississauga.
Terrific. Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to share the city's progress in advancing circular economy. Next slide, please. So before I begin on the circular economy, I need to back up a bit and kind of go through the city's role in waste management. The city is a lower tier municipality, and because of this, we operate our waste management more like a business. So we are responsible for our waste generated in our city-owned facilities and city-run parks. Next slide, please. And I'm looking at the Region of Peel 75% diversion target as a way to help forward our own diversion efforts with our dry cell battery take-back program, our dog waste collection program, and our Waste Reduction Week temporary collections of electronic and clothing. So now that we have an understanding of how waste management is managed, looking forward to how the framework that we already have at the city is helping us forward circular economy. Our strategic plan is our municipality's highest level policy document created to shape and direct strategic decision making. And we have the 5 strategic pillars, with one of them focusing on the environment, called the green pillar. And it's there to lead and encourage environmental responsibility approaches. And because of this high level strategy, we are then able to develop additional plans, policies, and strategies, such as the Living Green Master Plan, the Sustainable Procurement Policy, and then the Corporate Zero Waste Strategy, which is an internal plan for ourselves at the city. Next slide, please. And then the glue that holds it all together is the Climate Change Action Plan. The first really introduction of circular economy found in the city's Climate Change Action Plan here, Action 16-3. It's an intentional way of including an action within the climate change plan to create an opportunity to explore and rethink new ways of managing waste and moving away from a linear model. Next slide, please. And now having all of those in place and having the climate change 16-3 action helped us to apply and be chosen as one of the 15 municipalities to participate in the Circular Cities and Regions Initiative for the peer-to-peer network. An opportunity that not only provided knowledge sharing and networking, but also the facilitation of the development of a circular economy roadmap. It brought city staff together around a common goal. And as you all probably know, it's difficult to get staff sitting around talking about something for hours on end about an environmental initiative. And it was great to have the roadmap as a way to grab people's attention, come on in a room, well, virtual room, and have a discussion. Really great brainstorming from everyone who joined us. We had teams from planning and building and procurement and marketing and economic development office. It was very exciting to have those discussions, and then the outcome of a document that's now going to help guide our future circular economy opportunities. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that there is still the opportunity for cities out there to apply, municipalities, get out there, apply. If you're on the fence and you're not sure if this is what you want to do, the amount of time commitment to get this in is minimal compared to what you get out of it. So the deadline is extended to June 24th. So if you're wondering, just get your applications in there. Next slide, please. And from the roadmap, the areas of focus was continued collaboration. And that's what we're excited to also be a part of the Circular Economy Leaders Consortium, which is led by Partners in Project Green, part of Toronto and Region Conservation Authority, supported by TELUS. And it's an opportunity to join a diverse group of organizations. We're learning from different perspectives and approaches. So it's commercial, institutional, and municipal voices all discussing how we can move forward on this journey. Next slide, please. And so in saying this slide, I feel like it's a bit misleading in saying that we embed circular economy in city projects. It's more about, we found it was easier to demonstrate circular economy in existing city projects as a way to introduce the language. So space planning, they are our staff who do a great job in getting our office spaces set up, and they reconfigure and rejig everything whenever we're changing spots. And they already were doing circular economy work by picking materials that were modular and could be readjusted and rejigged so that they didn't have to buy new furniture every time we moved and shifted areas. As we continue to grow, we need to make sure that we have space for everyone, and space planning was already having those discussions. So it was having a conversation with them saying, you realize that this feeds into the circular economy, and that got them excited about, wow, I'm contributing to more than just an economic benefit to the city. I'm also helping an environmental one as well. We have something called the surplus asset solution. It's for all of the different city-owned items that people are kind of holding on to because they're not quite sure what to do with it, but they don't need it anymore. And it gave an opportunity to just follow a flow chart and go, okay, I don't want this anymore. What do I do first? Oh, let's check and see if anyone internally wants to use it. No, okay, well then we can look at a donation opportunity. And then to put circular economy language and saying, did you realize that this is part of a circular economy viewpoint? And it gets an excitement around that. And then our library staff, it was very exciting to have, and I'm going to say exciting a lot because you can tell I'm just very passionate about this. The library staff came to Environment and said, we are having a huge renovation at our flagship library, 5 floors, tons of material. We want to divert as much as we can. So to have that group of library staff, then we got together people from procurement, we got people from space planning, from IT, and of course ourselves from the environment, to develop a plan, which of course we did pre-pandemic, and we had all of these ideas about zero waste, and then went in and a lot of our avenues were not available to us during the pandemic. But because we had a lofty goal of zero waste, everyone pivoted, everyone got together, and we thought, how can we think of new ways to do this? And so we looked at reaching out to different partners and trying different like a catalog of here's a catalog of material. Partners in Project Green leveraged their material exchange program and put up a catalog for us of different communities could go in or donate and go, I want 10 of those chairs and I want 10 of those desks. And so by little, we got the material reused. Next slide, please. And so my final point about creating that circular economy buzz is once you get the buy-in and you have all of the expertise coming in from a variety of staff and space planning and library and environment, and we're measuring and documenting the process at various stages, it's just as important to express the success factor in this, to celebrate and showcase it. And it's easy to just say, okay, we did it and let's move on to the next thing. But the one thing that we took the time to document and measure. So let's take the time and celebrate it. And because of that, we're able to show that this project is scalable within the city. It's repeatable. There's opportunities for other people to try out different things and to get a group together and really work on something together. So from that point of view, it was a great opportunity. And last slide, please. So in connecting everything all together, kind of a reflection, and I was so happy to be able to put this presentation together because it got me to reflect and think about all the way the city had come from beginning to now. We're still very much in the beginning. I mean, we've been working on waste diversion at the city for a decade, and we still have a lot to learn. And we learn by doing and communicating and learning from others. We have the establishment now of the CCRI Circular Economy Roadmap. So it's going to help us to identify priorities and pilot projects so that we can also include updates in other policies that are coming out with circular economy language and include new policies. So it's great to have some quick wins as well and celebrate those quick wins because it spreads positivity and allows for momentum to continue the journey. So thank you so much for this opportunity. My signature is there. If you want to reach out, I'm happy to talk to anyone about all of this great stuff we're working on.
Thank you so much, Diane. And I want to comment, like, there's been such great conversations in the chat. I'm not sure if people saw the post that Eileen put in, but if you have a circular initiative that you feel requires mention because it's innovative or you want to share that idea. And I love that people are talking back and forth about different events that are going on. It's really telling me that maybe we need to have another session just for breakout rooms and networking. So we'll keep that in mind, but we'll keep going to our next speaker. I'd like to call on Shirley from Halton Region to present.
Good afternoon. So I'm excited to discuss how Halton Region solid waste management strategy is supporting the circular economy and how it became part of our strategy. Next slide. So just to let you know where we're located, Halton Region is located on Lake Ontario, west of Toronto and Mississauga. And we are the regional level of government. We service 4 local municipalities of Burlington, Oakville, Milton, and Halton Hills. And there's a population of approximately 600,000. And it's a quickly growing region as well. Next slide. So Halton Region owns and operates a waste management site that opened in 1992 to provide landfill capacity to the Halton residents. In order to conserve that landfill capacity and extend its lifespan as long as possible, Halton Region developed a strategy that puts a priority on waste diversion. The strategy is reviewed and updated periodically and has led to the successful implementation of several programs and services that have been supported by the community and resulted in a waste diversion rate of 58% in 2021. Next slide. So to develop the current strategy, we retain the services of Dillon Consulting, who you heard from earlier. The strategy identifies key initiatives for the next 10 years. We consulted with the public and community stakeholders in the fall of 2021 to gain input on the proposed strategy. During that consultation, the Circular Economy Initiative received 70% support in the online survey. And following that, the strategy was presented and approved by a regional council in May 25th. Next slide. So while we were developing the strategy, we asked Dillon to research the current federal and provincial policies, strategies, and regulations to ensure that the strategy we were putting together and proposing would be in compliance, support, and in line. And those include the zero plastic waste strategy, support for more EPR regulations, and the proposed ban on single-use plastics. Next slide. And in Ontario, oh, next slide as well. In Ontario, there's a new Blue Box regulation, and that is going to transition the Blue Box program from municipalities to full responsibility of the producers in the period from 2023 to 26, and Halton is scheduled to transition in 2025. And the intent of this program is to harmonize it across the province, making it easier for residents to recycle, and hopefully the producers will design for better recycling efficiencies. Next slide. Ontario has also released a food and organic waste framework that sets diversion targets for various sectors and proposes financial support, regulation changes, and policies to reduce food loss and waste throughout the system. Next slide. So we also asked Dillon to do research on municipal experience in waste management for best practices and trends. And you did hear earlier in the presentations today how Toronto and Vancouver are leaders in circular economy, and that did emerge in our research. And it did inform the development of the strategy and provide examples for including circular economy in our strategy. Next slide. So we came up with a long list of initiatives, and then we grouped them together into the categories as shown on the slide. And one of those categories is supporting the circular and sharing economies. So other key initiatives include enhanced data collection and monitoring, development of targeted communication campaigns, consider reducing the garbage bag limit and the use of wheeled carts for collection, optimizing landfill operations, implementing additional public drop-off facilities, researching alternative technologies to process waste for beneficial uses. So next slide. So as you're familiar with this model of the linear economy, the take, make, dispose, the challenge for Halton Region is that we are at the end of the get rid of stage of a product's life cycle. And so the question is, how can Halton Region as a municipality help transition to a circular economy? So this is the challenge we faced while we were developing the strategy. Next slide. So part of the process in developing the strategy was looking at what we are currently doing at our Halton Waste Management site. We have programs that collect items that are used by local charities, businesses, and artists to refurbish for reuse. And we also recycle the items that are listed there in the slide. Next slide. So there's also a reuse depot at the site, and it's operated by in a partnership with Salvation Army to accept household items for resale in their thrift stores and to recycle any clothing and textiles that cannot be reused. Next slide. We have an existing waste diversion fund, and that provides funding to not-for-profit charitable organizations operating reuse centers in the region. Next slide. And we also have corporate policies that enhance local food use and sustainability into the region's own procurement process. Next slide. And for our curbside programs we offer to the residents, we have the Blue Box program for recycling, Green Cart for food waste, we collect yard waste for composting, and metal appliances for recycling. So that's all of these existing programs led to the diversion rate of 58% in 2021. Next slide. So for the new strategy, we recognize that circular and sharing economy initiatives require participation and partnerships from various sectors and the community, and that Halton Region's role is to support and partner with local organizations and businesses. So that's how that's what's proposed in the strategy to include it. Next slide. So it's always easier to build on an existing program than implement an entirely new program. So how we've proposed to increase circular economy is to increase our current waste diversion fund and develop new funding criteria, eligibility requirements, and guidelines. And we will also develop a toolkit for businesses and provide educational support. Next slide. We will hire waste ambassadors to conduct targeted outreach to households and at community events, develop a comprehensive communication campaign based on market research, and utilize the region's social media channels and other online opportunities. Now that the strategy has been approved by our council, our next steps will be to do further research and develop the details for implementing these programs. Next slide. So thank you very much. I would thank you for the opportunity to talk about our strategy and how we developed, and I look forward to working collaboratively with everyone on developing these initiatives further and implementing them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shirley. Thank you for being really to the point on your initiatives. I found that really informational. And we'll pass on to our last speaker, Julie from York Region. Go ahead, Julie.
Great, thank you very much. If I can get the first slide. Perfect. Hi, everyone. My name is Julie Hordwick, and I'm the program manager for our integrated waste management strategy at York Region. Our team is leading the circular economy work at York Region because it does align with and is driven initially by our waste management master plan. So today I'll touch on how we started our journey, our most recent work in creating a roadmap for our community, and our next steps. Next slide. So just a little bit about York Region. We're a regional municipality composed of 9 local towns and cities. York's the 3rd largest municipality in Ontario and one of the fastest growing. We have a diverse population and a landscape that includes urban and rural areas. And we provide a range of services. One thing to note that we're very fortunate that our council is very progressive when it comes to waste management, and they've been really supportive of our work over the years, which is super helpful. Next slide. So just a little bit of background, I guess, on how we came to be involved in the circular economy. I think we've been working on waste-focused circular activities for a number of years, not necessarily calling them that, but in 2013, the region and local municipalities completed our first waste management master plan. It's called the Smart Living Plan, and it had a really strong focus on waste reduction and reuse, and established targets to reduce food waste and garbage generated from households in our community in an effort to improve the long-term sustainability of our waste management system. So over those first 5 years, we established community partnerships that helped us to create and deliver programs to encourage residents to reduce avoidable food waste at home, divert textiles to reuse, repair broken items to extend their life, borrow household items at local libraries to reduce their consumption, and swap unwanted items at the curb. It was a lot of piloting and learning and failing forward and continuous improvement. It was a really interesting period. And one key thing that we found was that many of our partners were outside of the waste sector. So not necessarily coming to our partnership with an interest in primarily in waste reduction. The libraries, maker spaces, farmers markets, social services organizations were all really important players in our programming and our development and our success. And many of the people that participated in the programs did so for reasons other than waste reduction. So really coming to it from an interest in improving their health, making social connections, saving money, just as a hobby, enjoying tinkering with things. So lots of reasons beyond waste reduction. So in 2020, when we updated our plan, reflecting back on our lessons learned from those initial years of work, the new plan does stay the course with a focus on waste reduction, but it also added an objective to reflect the important work of building and maintaining partnerships. And included in that was the idea of broadening our focus out from just a waste focus to looking at how the circular economy could align with other regional and community priorities such as economic development, health and well-being, local food, climate change mitigation. So a lot of the things that other folks have touched on definitely are important areas that we want to explore with the hope of broadening our network of partners, and by doing that, engaging even more citizens in activities with the side benefit of reducing waste as well. So to begin implementing this work, we're looking at how we can leverage the region's operations to lead and demonstrate circular economy practices, and also how we can integrate that circular lens, circular thinking into the broader policies and programs delivered by departments across the region to help shape our community. So next slide. We are super fortunate that there's lots of great circular economy work already happening in our community. We have some great community partners that are delivering reduction reuse programming in alignment with some of their priorities. Internally, in chatting with folks, we uncovered things like work that our capital planning and development group is doing to establish new infrastructure guidelines that incorporate recycled content and recycling in construction practices, and also things like water reuse and energy conservation within our buildings as well. So really trying to establish that circularity there, and lots of great businesses popping up, engaging residents in zero waste options, zero waste lifestyles, and really educating people about the circular economy. So it's really been helpful in terms of building momentum for this circular economy roadmap, to know that there's so much support within the community. Next slide. The key question for us was, and still is, what are the best opportunities for a municipality to support the development of circular activities in the community? Luckily, we've been able to learn from thought leaders and experts around the world who are kind of leading the way in this area. So we've been using this framework of policy levers for municipalities that was developed by the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in a lot of our stakeholder engagement to help illustrate what is the circular economy and how municipalities are participating in it, to kind of spark ideas on how we could change our operations and policies to support circularity and how we can benefit from it across the region. Next slide. Over the past year, we've been engaging with internal and external stakeholders, as well as leaders and other municipalities in the field to inform our plans. I will echo the sentiment that we were super lucky to be able to participate in the Circular Cities and Regions initiative. And a little plug that is still open and an opportunity for folks until June 24th. And it was very beneficial to us to really advance our knowledge in this area very quickly, and also make some really great connections with municipalities that are doing the same kind of work. So that's very, very helpful. Through that process, we connected with over 50 staff from across the region, so 50 leaders that were engaged in virtual workshops to identify alignments between circular economy and the work that their departments do, and also to identify some opportunities where we could become more circular as an organization. We also spent a lot of time visiting team, branch, and leadership meetings across the region, just to get people aware of what the circular economy was and to start to spark some ideas. And we did some virtual workshops with our community partners as well. That allowed us to understand from their perspective how the region could be more supportive. Next slide. So from all that input, we were able to distill it down to some key themes that helped to build out our circular economy roadmap. And the ideas were evaluated based on their alignment with corporate priorities, readiness, and the potential to make an impact at the regional scale. Next slide. So we identified two kind of internal focusing action areas, asset management, circular procurement, and these were chosen because they're cross-cutting functions that support different departments. So we thought we'd be able to advance more circularity by looking at that, at those policies that are supportive of a variety of different departments. So we'll be looking at policy updates, as well as more research and baseline data to evaluate opportunities. Next slide. We also found 3 community focused action areas that kind of build on work that we were already doing. So we've done quite a bit around food waste, but really wanting to broaden to look at more opportunities for a circular food economy in the region, looking at ways we can support more reuse and sharing programming within the community, and also that capacity building that's been such a theme, education. So we do have a circular economy initiatives fund that supports nonprofits to deliver circular economy programming. We're also developing a kind of an experts working group of local leaders from York Region who will help to support and champion our activities. Next slide. And then in terms of next steps, our circular economy roadmap was just endorsed by council, which is very exciting and a great step for us. It comes at a really good time because we are moving into the next election cycle and the next council cycle. So we're doing a lot of strategic planning. We're doing budgeting for the next 4 years. So we're now able to embed those circular economy concepts into that work, which is great. We're working on establishing that community advisory committee to help with building out those community focused action areas and looking at how we can start to implement some of those internal ones as well. Last slide. So that's the website where you would find our circular economy roadmap if you want to have a poke around at that. And I'm always happy to chat about this. As with everyone, I think we're just really excited to be involved in this work.
Great. Thank you so much, Julie. That was awesome. Yeah, and I do encourage you that if you have a burning question for one of our presenters, please do put it in the chat. I do know that we've had a couple that have come up over the course of the talk, but I did want to get to a poll that we have, just a timely poll, I think, given what everybody has said. So Desiree, do you mind pulling up the poll? And the poll is, what areas would you like to see your municipality focus on? And you can choose any of these: the waste prevention and recovery, sharing and reuse economy, business and social innovation, industrial symbiosis, so meaning using waste, I think that was supposed to be using kind of waste as a resource, and then circular procurement. So feel free to respond to that. I'll be curious to see how everyone thinks on that. And awesome. Well, yes, we have quite a few people answering in many of those buckets. So I wonder how many people chose all of them. Yeah, so good. Thank you so much for that poll. So I'll get to some of the questions. The first question that came up over the course was, I think, geared towards Tessa's presentation. So Tessa, maybe you want to take this. And this is just a curiosity about how water plays into the circular economy. Did you want to answer that, Tessa?
Sure. I think actually somebody in the chat already answered the question fairly well, because I think all principles apply to water just as they do for any technical product or goods or materials, in the sense that it's all about avoiding that there is wasted water in the design of systems. It's about maintaining water as much as possible in closed loops, and ultimately ensuring that the water in the natural area is continuously regenerated and not impacted negatively by human activity. So I think it's just like for any other a material stream in the economy.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tessa. And yeah, maybe people, we should realize that even, energy and economy and how we do our systems, everything can be made more circular. It's not just even about the hard commodities, but there's all the systems that can be made more circular. Our next question was geared towards the New Glasgow's presentation, and they would love to learn more about New Glasgow's circular economy and literacy program, which departments are involved and how is the program carried out, whether it's through internal working groups or not.
Yeah, for sure. So our circular economy literacy efforts are for sure in the early stages. I don't think we've necessarily been able to reach everyone as yet. For the most part, I am involved in the senior leadership meetings, and I use that as a means of providing updates on the work and increasing knowledge and awareness at that level. We will be presenting the circular economy roadmap this summer to council. So building out that presentation to ensure that we are establishing a foundation of knowledge for council in what we're trying to do and what it means when we talk about the circular economy. I think as we roll out more and more throughout the organization, it'll likely be led through our climate change steering committee, as well as through our asset management committee, which was established just this month, actually just this week. So that's probably how we will do it. We want to make sure that we can reach all departments. And again, being a smaller municipality, there are advantages. And with things opening up again post-COVID, I think we'll look to organize a lunch and learn probably within this year to bring everybody together and give them an update. I ran through this presentation with a few staff from our front counter, and they had no idea that I was doing this work. So it's something we struggle with in terms of keeping everyone informed and breaking down silos. But our committees is probably how we'll move this forward, and it definitely rests kind of on my shoulders to ensure that we are building that CE knowledge and literacy.
Yeah, and you're not the only one. You consider yourself a small municipality, and the bigger ones even have an even bigger challenge in communication. But thanks for that. So another question that came across, and I appreciate people chiming in the chat to answer some of these as well, because it gives some different perspectives. But can anyone give advice on successfully implementing sharing or lending libraries in communities? I'm not sure if any of our speakers want to take this one. I'm not sure who's best to answer.
I can start anyway. We have three, we call them lenderies, but they're sharing spaces within 3 local library branches. And it was really through the partnership with the libraries, and that makes them a sustainable piece in terms of funding and in the structure. So we provided that initial input of money for establishing like the infrastructure, the shelving, and purchasing the items. We worked with them around developing policies for how to check them in and out, what to do if stuff is damaged, that kind of thing. And then we actually did do surveys with the library patrons to understand what type of items people wanted, so that we were sure that we were meeting an interest. And it does tend to be sort of less often used kitchen items or sporting goods or stuff for parties that you wouldn't use very often, and so you don't necessarily want to have in your own home. And so that's really where most of the appeal has been. And I think just doing that kind of ground truthing to get folks to provide input around what they wanted has really helped with that success piece. And each library did do that separately because they kind of know their audiences best in the different communities. And then just the fact I think that they're built into the library is pretty convenient for folks as well. So those are the kind of things that we've found successful in terms of getting these things off the ground. COVID was a little bit challenging because a lot of the libraries did have to close for a while, but they are reopened now and kind of promoting. And then we're also working with the libraries around things like repair cafes, which kind of builds, I think, a little bit more awareness of the lending library piece as well. And we're hoping to build out a little bit more programming around it too. So things like workshops around using an Instant Pot, so that then they can borrow the Instant Pot and try it out and see how it works for them. So thinking about the lenderies as a bit of a jumping off point for other reuse or food waste or different types of workshops is helpful too.
Great, thank you so much, Julie. Was anyone else wanting to chime in on this one? There is another question that was interesting, and this was talking just about municipalities that are working on waste at the end of the life cycle of the product, and whether municipalities are working with businesses or manufacturing to reduce the waste generation from the production stage of products. And I'm wondering who might be best to speak to that. Maybe Mississauga or Halton.
I guess I could speak. I can't speak a lot on this aspect because we're just in the early stages, and it's not the environment that's driving this. It's the Economic Development Office, and it's having the conversations with businesses and providing an opportunity to connect. So we're in the very early stages, and we haven't done any implementation yet of this, but it's definitely based on the discussions with our Economic Development Office when we were discussing the roadmap. This is where all these ideas and pilots came up. So I from what we're working on at the city is looking internally and getting everything on our side in place, and then focusing on external after that.
Yeah, thanks for that. And obviously, municipalities also need the support of other players to help make what they're trying to do a success too. And that's where, the business side might need to come into it. So I'm going to give a quick little plug reminder that the World Circular Economy Forum event that will happen later in the fall is going to be focusing on businesses. And so if there are some unique businesses in your area that are trying to initiate circularity in the way they do business, we would love to highlight them at that event and have them participate in our case studies. So just looking at the next one. So there was one question. They would love to hear more about circular procurement strategies. What sorts of requirements are you asking suppliers to meet? And are any cities providing research and development support for companies looking to redesign their products according to circular economy principles? Throwing that out there generally, I'm not sure if maybe Halton or York maybe.
I guess I could speak a little bit to it because I did mention our waste diversion fund. At this point in time, I don't think that it is intended to provide funding for redesign of products. I think from the business standpoint, and it's one of the things we have to figure out, and we'll be doing more research on, is as a municipality, how can we support the local businesses? And we will be we'll be reaching out with our economic development department as well to see, and what we had in mind was more of an educational toolkit to teach businesses about circular economy and maybe direct them to other resources. So if there are sources of funding that they can access, maybe compile those sources and let them know about that, but not necessarily the region providing that funding.
Well, and I guess maybe Tessa, you might know, are there some research and development initiatives around redesign that people should be aware of?
There are so many materials around redesigning. The Ellen MacArthur Foundation website is always a good place to start. It provides tons of resources on designing it in the circular economy. IDEO is an organization that has good guidance and toolkits on how to design in a circular economy. I personally like the IDEO materials a lot, and I've used it quite a lot in the past. And challenges are always a very good way to get people to design differently. A challenge can be relatively cheap. People don't need much, just a prize to start coming up with ideas for new designs and new approaches. And it's like crowdsourcing an idea. You see also young people getting engaged, maybe even people that are still in school that come up with great ideas that are worth supporting, and just providing them with a small prize and publicity is sometimes a great way to get started.
Great. We did have a question that I wanted to ask Rachel at New Glasgow, and that was just about what is your top hurdle in becoming a circular city?
The top hurdle, that's a great question. I think there are several hurdles. I think it kind of relates back a bit to the circular procurement question, in that it's something we really want to do, but And we are doing, and absolutely, but at times we are restricted when it comes to our size. I highlighted how great it is to be a small town in terms of moving from concept stage to implementation quite quickly. And when it comes to our circular procurement and wanting to advance this work and work with companies that are promoting redesign and repurposing and repairability of their goods, we are limited in terms of our local buying power with what does exist in our backyard. So as much as possible, we want to leverage our buying power, but we want to incentivize this work locally and use it as a means of educating companies on what they can do. So I think, we're dealing with supply chain issues everywhere, and where we're located can make it even harder, even in the context of buying an electric vehicle right now, the wait time alone. So I think that's a big hurdle, would be just kind of in the same sense, our local context. But we don't allow it to fully stop us. I think there's still a lot that can be done. And really with circular procurement, it will be most likely kind of staged out, where there'll be phases and rewarding companies for better sustainability criteria and some of those key pieces around circularity. And hopefully we'll see that transition follow.
Thanks. I see a doozy of a question in the chat. Is there a city official here who could address the conundrum of communicating the concept of reduce in the context of the best purchase is the one we don't make, and the economic development responsibility to promote business fairly? I'm not sure who is ready to take that question. Uncomfortable silence. I'm gonna pick on Julie.
I can take a stab at it. I feel like that's almost two questions, right? First, the piece around the reduction messaging. It's definitely something that we've struggled with. We do have those reduction goals, and one of sort of the initial, I think, concerns that council had was that we would be telling people what they can do kind of in their personal lives in terms of what they can buy. And that's not our intention at all. So with some of our waste reduction programming, we've focused on some of the alternative benefits of reducing waste. So for instance, with food waste, the cost savings associated with it, the health and time-saving benefits of doing some things like meal planning, like shopping with a list. So really trying to find benefits beyond just the heavier messaging around reducing waste. We also see now that there is so much more interest, even just in the past few years, around climate change. So I think the opportunity to tie climate impact to waste reduction and helping people understand that that change in consumption is one of the ways that we can affect climate change mitigation is really important too. It's really interesting to see, having been working on waste reduction for a number of years, just the increase in awareness and interest and I think desire to change that has come about in the past few years with the greater awareness of the challenges of recycling plastics and textiles. We definitely have a long way to go, but I think people are much more receptive to the waste reduction messaging than maybe they were before. I wish I had like a silver bullet answer, and if anybody finds it, that would be great. But I think it's a lot about understanding your audience too, and what motivates them. And the piece around promoting businesses and economic development is one of the ones that we're kind of struggling with a little bit too. We'd like to highlight businesses that are doing some great things within our community, but have to be aware of some of the limitations of being a municipal government and not showing favoritism. So we're looking at ways that we can kind of set up processes to allow businesses to submit their great practices and have a bit of a transparent process for identifying some great players within the community, working with our economic development folks who have a little bit more experience and expertise in that area to try and find some ways to do that, or highlighting sort of functions like for Plastics Free July, highlighting some of the refilleries in our communities, and just letting folks know how to find them, but not necessarily focusing on one particular business, so that we're not running into that issue of adding benefit to one business over another.
Yeah, thank you so much. So I'm cognizant of time and this session has just whizzed by, but I would like to give each speaker a minute to just provide some closing remarks. So maybe I'll start with Tessa.
Well, I'm just extremely happy that this conversation is happening. And I think, you know, it's a journey for all of us. And continuing to have the conversations is, I think, one of the most valuable things. So I'm happy to be here today, and I hope that there's going to be many more of these sessions.
Thank you so much. Rachel?
Yeah, thank you. I actually just want to say, I think extended producer responsibility is another key area that we maybe haven't touched on a lot today. And I know that provinces have different levels of EPR programs, and I know the whole elected official or the town official piece kind of stood out to me because our mayor is a big proponent for expanding EPR in our province. And I think it is a real effective means of advancing the circular economy. So I just wanted to add that in there. But thank you very much to everyone on the panel. It's great to be able to share our learnings around the circular economy. And I think that for anyone, business or organization that's in the early stages, certainly don't be afraid to get started. Small successes are extremely important, and we all have to start somewhere. And I think there's ample opportunity to effectively move this work forward. And it's great to have so many people online today that are clearly passionate about the circular economy, and looking forward to seeing where this takes us.
Thanks. Diane?
Yeah, to just say that it's great to have a group of network that we can reach out to as a city and share kind of the struggles that we're going through, and see that others are having the same and might have come up with some solutions already. So it's very much a sharing community, and just to advocate for more of those opportunities. Really appreciative to have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Shirley?
Yes, I just echo all of that. And it's really critical for everyone to work together. All sectors have a role in this, and no one can do it on their own. We all have to work together and collaboratively to move this forward, and just continue discussing and sharing ideas. And one piece of advice someone from Toronto gave me early on when we were researching this is just trying to get it into our municipal plan, strategies, policies, like just trying to get it in, and then from there we can continue advancing the work.
Great advice. Julie?
Definitely, the collaboration piece and getting to know different folks in different sectors doing similar work has been so beneficial for us. I think what I've really enjoyed as well is the positivity around circular economy. I think people are really looking for solutions, and really once they understand the circular economy, see the value and the how sensible it is, and how engaging it is for people to start to reimagine the work that they're doing from a circular perspective. So it's really been exciting to have these conversations internally and externally, and so great to have them today as well.
Thank you. George, do you mind going to our last slide? Because I do want to remind people that there is a circular economy world forum that's happening in the fall. So please, if you're a business who's watching, feel free to connect with us. We also hope to have more of these types of conversations, whether it's with municipalities, whether it's with businesses, whether it's with just individuals who really want to move the circular economy forward. So please reach out to any one of the organizers who are on the call today, or send an email to our CECS cecscanada@gmail.com to reach out to us and give your feedback on how you felt the session went, if there are any future sessions you'd like to have. To me, it just spoke great volume that there's a need for more networking among this community. We're so pleased to have so many people attending and participating in the conversation today. Thank you so much. And stay tuned. We will be providing the links to the presentation and the recording and the poll questions after the event. So we will send that out to everyone who registered. Thank you so much. Any final remarks there, Audrey?
I just love to hear the word collaboration constantly being used, because this is our way forward. And thank you so much to our presenters. Wow, it's great to hear what's going on in municipalities, and we're going to do this each year. So we'll see how this comes to life again a year from now, and you'll be doing even more. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our session today.